All right, welcome to the Latest.com show. I'm Igor Deris. Joining me, he's a military vet and Latest.com senior political analyst from Pittsburgh, Josh Patton. And he's a 24-year veteran of the U.S. State Department and the author of We Meant Well from New York, Peter Van Buren. Well, last night something amazing happened. I mean, Donald Trump self-destructed and looked like a rambling mess. But more than that, Donald Trump was on an actual presidential debate. A guy best known for a reality show and a feud with Rosie O'Donnell has now gotten as far in the presidential elections as Mitt Romney, John McCain, Al Gore, John Kerry, all of them. So, 5 years ago at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, this guy was the butt of every joke. Obama completely destroyed him. And now he's, that close to where Obama is right now. Josh, what does it say to the rest of the world that we let this rambling know-nothing this close to the White House? Josh.
I think it says nothing good. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear us? This is already off to a great start.
I think it's good to the world. And I think that's why one of the more notable moments that no one's going to talk about in the debate was when Clinton apologized to the world, to America's allies for Donald Trump, when she said that, we have agreements and we will honor them. So, I feel like that says all we really need to know about how Trump appears on the international stage.
Yeah, it was a big story today, though. More than 80 million people watched the debate in America, and obviously it would probably go up above 100 million once you counter the live streams and the C-SPAN and PBS. But it's also being watched overseas, Peter. How does America come off just even having him up on the same stage?
I think people think we're completely insane. A couple of weeks ago, I was able to travel parts of Europe. And everywhere I went, people wanted to know what was going on with Donald Trump. And these are folks who were generally educated people who are used to the Americans, us, sending nutcases off to Washington. I mean, these are people who lived through the George Bush era, who some of them even old enough to have lived through the Ronald Reagan era. And even then, they're really surprised and a little bit scared of Donald Trump. I don't think that's different from what a lot of Americans think. That said, people roll their eyes and sort of say, well, we made it through the others. We'll probably make it through Trump if that's what you people do. But please don't do this.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that Hillary won the debate. I think even Peter, who's our resident Hillary hater, couldn't argue that Donald Trump won that debate. But I guess the big question is, did she win any new voters? Because, before we used to always talk about, well, they're Trump supporters, they're not going anywhere. Now we're seeing there's like a bit of voters, because his support is higher now than it was before. There's some voters that aren't married to him, but they're supporting him right now. So there's some for the taking there. And of course, there's the third party vote, which is probably the biggest demographic that Hillary can draw from, that they're not going to vote for Trump. Right now they're supporting Johnson or Stein or whatever. So Josh, do you feel like she did maybe enough to capture some of those millennials and independents that weren't going to back Trump but weren't really ready to back her yet?
It depends. My gut says no, because I feel like pretty much everyone's opinion of Hillary Clinton is already baked in. You already feel about her one way or another. And I don't know if there's enough voters who are uncertain to do that. That's just sort of my gut feeling about it. But then again, I did speak to one of my friends who is one of the most fervent Gary Johnson supporters that I know, and he said not only did he recognize more that Donald Trump is, the term he used was clear and present danger to the Republic, but he also said that some of the things that Clinton said, specifically when she briefly mentioned climate change and, the temperament and preparation arguments, spoke to him in a way that he wasn't expecting. And, I mean, he lives in a swing state in Virginia, and he said that he's going to cast his vote for Hillary Clinton this year and work to get libertarians elected at lower office levels. So who knows? I mean, that's an anecdotal, that's one guy, but maybe that did happen. Though my gut says that if you didn't like Clinton, you don't think she won the debate.
Well, again,
if you don't like Clinton, if you don't like Clinton more than you don't like Trump.
Anecdotally, I mean, we were talking about it last week, how I was looking for a third-party option to vote for and wasn't finding any because Stein and Johnson are so embarrassing. I got to say, watching Hillary last night, if she pulls it off another couple of times, I would like a president that I'm not completely embarrassed of, and the other three are just not looking like that guy. The other point you made is there aren't people that are ready to be swayed, but, I mean, we look at the polls, sure, there's like 30-40% of the people that are going to vote for Hillary and Trump regardless, but there are people right now that are moving the polls that right now it's up. Trump's up in a lot of big states before Hillary was destroying him. Peter, do you think that she could persuade those people that left her for Trump in the last few weeks to come back? And also
she's going to have
over millennials and independent voters.
Yeah. She's going to have a tough path to that, and she didn't really do herself a lot of good last night. You know, we talk about her winning the debate, and clearly overall she won the debate. But if you talk about the first 30 minutes or so, there's questions about who really came out ahead on that. Trump was on the offensive. He was speaking directly to people in the swing states of Ohio and Pennsylvania. He was pressing the red meat buttons, if you will, about NAFTA, about TPP. And Hillary didn't have a lot of defense that she could play on those issues. So in terms of talking to those swing state voters, Trump was looking down the camera lens at them. He obviously imploded after that and became sort of a babbling fool for the next hour. That said, Hillary is tied statistically with Donald Trump. I mean, there's a sentence, I'm pretty sure you talk about Trump on the stage, a sentence that none of us expected to really be saying. But she is. She has to win some votes from somewhere. I think she didn't do anything to increase her truthiness. People that were concerned about her telling the truth about her emails, the Clinton Foundation, her health, whatever it is, I mean, she avoided those questions. She ducked them when Trump briefly brought them up, and she never introduced anything. That did not help her with that group, marginal group, if you will. She tried very hard to shout out to the African-American community. I'm not sure there was much new in there. As far as millennials are concerned, I think she was trying, and as Josh pointed out, climate change is a very important issue. But one of the things I think she needs to do, and it's kind of outside the debate, but she still might have touched on it, is she needs to stop her supporters and minions from basically saying, if you're going to vote third party, you're a complete asshole, and you better just vote for Hillary. That is not swaying hearts and minds. And she may have wished to address something like that, a little more sympathetically, a little more intellectually last night. She may have had a chance there that she didn't take.
Well, I mean,
I was just going to say that one of the things that I think she did do correctly in that regard is she finally got her email answer right. I mean, it was maybe 90 seconds. She admitted fault and said she wouldn't do it again, and then that was it. Up until then, she would always then go into parsing I said marked classified, and I didn't know it was marked classified. Like, she would give these excusey answers, and I think that sort of accepting, the fault and then not adding any sort of qualifications after it, that might have helped with people who didn't like the way that, think that the scandal wasn't so much of a scandal, but just didn't like the way she handled it. Is that enough of a, swath of people to bump up the polls? We don't know. But I think she did get that one right, and she really got let off easy. And I don't even think the Clinton Foundation was mentioned once.
No, not once.
Donald Trump
huge
had
failure
every
on Facebook.
chance to attack her on the Clinton Foundation, on Benghazi.
Yep.
He never even brought up the Supreme Court, which I think
Yep.
has been one of his strongest arguments in appealing to conservatives.
Next time they're going to have to get him to write this stuff on his hand or something, because I mean, he just, like you said, he brought up the emails once, he let her off, he allowed her to take him off topic and get into some bizarre series of twisty turns about his tax returns. Clinton Foundation didn't come up. Benghazi didn't come up. Very, very little about her foreign affairs. He never even said she voted for the Iraq War.
Yeah,
That was a huge failure on his part.
Hillary gave him some huge holes, and the guy's been pushing Benghazi the entire campaign. Yesterday, she made a joke about the 11 hours she spent testifying at the Benghazi hearings, and he just let her have it and continued to ramble with his nonsense that no one could follow at all. Aside from just trying to woo over new voters, one of the things we've been talking about with Hillary is if she can get the turnout. And if her own supporters, God, Peter, is that you with the police sirens in the background?
Yeah,
Or someone
I'm sorry about that.
It's the Hillary police. They've come to finally take Peter away.
I was going to say, I'm going to be dragged off camera to the Vince Foster work camp any minute now. So,
it's very authentic. That's like the New York soundtrack, the police cars and the car.
Yeah, exactly.
So aside from just wooing over new voters, we've been talking about if Hillary can get the turnout she needs in order to compete with Trump, because his supporters are rabid. So aside from just wooing over the other people, do you think that, we've seen her small rallies, her lackadaisical support. I saw a bit of her rally earlier today in North Carolina, and she was a lot more fired up. Her audience was a lot more fired up than usual anyway. Do you think the debates, Josh, can help alleviate some of that enthusiasm gap as we've talked about?
I think so. I do think that if you were a fan or leaning towards Hillary Clinton, you can be very proud of her performance, especially given the way that Trump behaved. He kept interrupting her. And I mean, there was one tweet, I forget which journalist tweeted it, but she said that finally the entire country can see an unprepared man interrupting and lecturing a woman about the field she spent her life in. And I think that there are people out there, women out there who may, again, if not fully pushes them over the edge towards Hillary, at least lets them see her sympathetically. Because Hillary Clinton's problem has always been her perception, how people see her. And, if people see her as the status quo, corrupt, power-hungry politician that she's been painted as, she's going to lose, no question. But if they see her, there's times like when, people brought her up a lot on TV yesterday when her opponent in the 2000 Senate race bum rushed her podiums, telling her to sign this paper, and it completely backfired, I'm surprised that I wouldn't be surprised if even just bringing up Jennifer Flowers, Trump pushed a couple points of Clinton's favorability in the positive direction, because it always helps her when they remind the world that Bill Clinton cheated. So I do think that her supporters will probably have enough that they can latch on to, create some enthusiasm. The question is, will the Clinton campaign be able to ride that sort of wave of enthusiasm, at least into the next debate? Because as we've seen up until now, from the post-conventions and then I think it was after Bernie's endorsement, she does this thing where the campaign does this thing where they have a great moment, and then she disappears for a couple days, obviously to do fundraising or training or whatever. But, they don't hammer it the way that Trump does. Like when he screws up, especially in the beginning, he'll just keep getting back out there and keep saying more stuff until there's so many appearances beyond where he screwed up that we're already talking about something else. Clinton, she'll go out, there'll be like the basket of deplorables thing, then she's gone for a couple days, and it just sort of festers. So if they can figure out how to switch that'll be more helpful than any sort of debate boost, I think.
I think a big part of her strategy has been to just let Trump talk himself out. I think even yesterday she showed that, but the first 20 minutes or so when Trump looked strongest, she just let him interrupt her and didn't really counter anything, and then she just let him keep going, and it happened again. Trump just when he gets into that stream of consciousness mode, man, he just starts talking about how good his son is with computers and the 400-pound hacker got into the DNC.
Right.
It's just nonsense. But, Peter, do you think that Hillary won over her own supporters yesterday, even if you don't think that she won over the independents?
I mean, the people who were strongly in supporting her, of course, they saw nothing last night that would shake their support.
Is it enough to come out on Election Day? Because we know that Trump's angry-ass voters are coming out.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think she continues to press this. She has to be very careful about this victim stuff where she's the woman maligned, because that doesn't fit well with the strength that she's trying to portray herself as a world leader. It doesn't help her with the mail votes and things like that. I think overall her core supporters saw what they always see with her, and that is part of the problem. Last night she had a chance to swing for the fence, and she played it safe again. It's the same thing you were talking about. She'll go out now, and for the next couple of days, she'll make the stump speech over and over and over again. And there's not this sense of momentum that something's happening here. She's not acting like someone who needs to really rethink and fight. And I think some of her supporters are starting to get a little bit worried that, her gut isn't really in this. She's not really ready to be vulnerable, if you will, to expose herself, to take the chances, to really step up and say, I really want to win this, and I'm going to fight him on this. I'm not going to play it safe anymore. I don't know. I mean, as far as embarrassing Trump, I don't think it's possible to do that. We've been talking here for a year and a half worth of podcasts about Trump can't get away with that. Trump can't get away with this. This is probably the last time for him. I mean, we talked all the way through the Republican debates. So the fact that she appears to have scored so many points against him, how many lies he's had, how many fact checkers he's beaten into bloody pulps, is close to irrelevant, I think, at this point in the campaign. A lot of people were looking for something from Hillary that I don't think they got last night. We already know she's the grown-up in the room, but I don't know that's enough. If it was enough, she'd be ahead by 30 points.
After the debate, John Podesta, who's a longtime Clinton advisor, speculated that Trump might back out of doing any more debates, and then Rudy Giuliani kind of fueled that fire by saying that Trump should boycott the debates unless the moderators agree not to fact-check him. Josh, do you think there's a reasonable chance that we might see the Trump campaign try to weasel out of doing any more debates?
That one, man. I mean,
because we heard it before.
Any other year,
we speculated a lot that Trump wouldn't do any debates.
Right. No, I mean, and he skipped one of the primary debates. I mean, that's kind of unheard of.
They wanted to do like a couple of debates later on in primary season, and he just outright refused, and they never held them.
Yeah. So. Again, any other year, I would say that's a stupid question to ask, but I feel like it's 50-50, especially if Trump is able to, with his supporters, if he's able to make it look like he's not running away, if he does some sort of other kind of stunt, like if he's able to pull off another like veterans fundraiser or something like that, it could work. Though I do think it would be, I don't know. I don't think that. I think he kind of loves the audience a little too much too, because here's the thing: as much as everyone's saying Trump didn't do well, I absolutely believe Trump thinks he fucking nailed it. I think he thought he did a great job, and I think that the appeal of millions of people, tens of millions of people, watching him uninterrupted for an hour and a half is too appealing to pass up, even if he's taken it on the chin with sort of the mainstream voters and press.
Peter, what do you think of
I think he'll be there.
But what do you think the chances are of him trying to see if he can like weasel out without it hurt? Because, I mean, I feel like the speculation about him skipping the debates before started because he started tweeting about how it's up against Monday Night Football, which, I mean, obviously didn't hurt the ratings for the debate. So he was floating to see how it would go over with the press, I think. I think he might float a couple of things and just see feel it out. What are you going to say, Josh?
One key distinction, and this was in one of the stories I did on Latest yesterday, the debate commission and the campaigns apparently had, no problem negotiating the terms of the debate, and the campaigns did not sign the typical agreement that says we will participate in all these debates. Now, they've said that that's because this was such a smooth negotiation process, they didn't feel it was necessary. But that could be spin. So just saying that, the fact that they didn't sign the I pledge to participate in all the debates thing, I mean, it's essentially a meaningless document, but the fact that they didn't want to sign a meaningless document could signal that they're going to entertain the thought if they feel that it's.
Josh, no, internet's falling apart. Peter, did you want to jump in real quick?
Yeah, I think Trump will certainly make some noise. I mean, he'll do anything to get headlines, and if it looks like flirting with the idea that he's going to skip one of the debates or the next debates gets him in the headlines, he's absolutely going to do that. I think the only way he would not show up for the next debate is if there's polling that shows that, he's really taken some hard hits on his numbers after last night. But I don't think that's what the polls are going to show. Now, what I do think is we're going to see a very different Donald Trump the next time around. I think we're going to see a lot more aggressive Donald Trump. And I think if his advisors have anything at all to say about it, you're going to see a better prepared Donald Trump, maybe not with facts and figures, but certainly prepared to go on the attack against Hillary, a little more skillful at deflecting some of her questions and not getting lost in the weeds of his personal taxes and lawsuits from 3 decades ago, and Miss America and Rosie O'Donnell. I mean, some of that stuff is just like, what is he talking about?
Call Sean Hannity, Peter. Call Sean Hannity.
I've got to call in if we get interrupted, But I was actually paying attention. I mean, it's sort of job related and stuff. And it was still hard to follow. Never mind the, typical Americans who don't spend all their lives looking at this stuff and who may have been drinking more heavily than the three of us. So I think if Trump has any brains at all, and I'll leave space for that argument, I think his advisors are going to say, look, you're going to have to go out. You're going to have to do this differently next time. And we've seen that before. Right, the famous one is 2012 when Mitt Romney swept the floor with Barack Obama in the first debate, and then bled into oblivion ever since after that. So keep in mind, Hillary's been doing this forever. And by the way, that was a really good line he had about, well, you've had 30 years, Hillary, to fix some of these problems.
Yeah, that was his best line.
He also said that you've been fighting ISIS your entire adult life, which was just bizarre.
Yeah, I think he meant, how unadult she's been, or how ISIS. He was actually referring to the Egyptian goddess Isis,
right?
The goddess of the Nile, whose existed since antiquity, and yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what he meant. Those are Trump things. I mean, God bless us. In 2016, those don't hardly even register anymore. It's mainly getting him to stay on track and to stay on the attack with her, and to have at least a few kind of prepared, thought-out answers. I mean, every single human being on planet Earth knew she was going to hit him with show us your tax returns. I think the three of us could be woken up at 4 a.m. and we would have a better answer than whatever the hell he said.
Yeah.
I mean, even outside of his positions, which whatever they may be, we saw him on a split screen the entire night, which was just a bizarre thing, just with the faces and constantly interrupting and fidgeting and the sniffing. And the other thing is that he talks so good. I mean, this is a guy who couldn't string together a sentence. He just kept repeating buzzwords like the cyber and the nuclear and the political. And this guy is just like a Fox News viewer who doesn't have a good grasp of the facts, but he heard something on TV and now he wants to go argue about it at a Starbucks. Just spews these things.
Hold that thought.
I'm holding
but
it.
But hold that thought,
I'm
Igor. You just described the hardcore Trump supporter.
Right, but the America's not made up of hardcore Trump supporters. There's the good, 60% of people out there who are, maybe not up for grabs, but they're not Trump supporters. He's built his whole campaign on these ridiculous sound bites, and that there's no factual argument behind them, and that's really glaring in a debate format, especially with the town hall one coming up. Josh, is there anything Trump can do to not look like a complete boob when facts start flying at him?
See, I don't know, because that's part of, I think, what my weakness is in trying to analyze these debates and see who won. Because, again, if you can listen to Trump speak and go, I get what he's saying, that's a superpower that I don't have. I mean, Peter mentioned Bush, George, W. a little bit ago, and when W talked, he said some silly things, but you kind of got what he was getting at. You could follow. He'd fuck up a word, or he'd giggle at the wrong time. But Trump, he just talks and talks and talks until he gets a thing that I think, until he says a thing that in his mind goes, nailed her, and then stops. And it's very hard for me to figure out how people that don't follow politics all the time parse what he says and what they take away from it. If you can listen to him talk and not think he sounds like a guy giving a book report in front of the class and he didn't even read the book, then he sounded great on trade, probably sounded decent on the law and order business, but if you appreciate sentence construction and grammar, I don't know how Trump is going to reach you.
Now, Peter mentioned what his advisors are going to be telling him going forward, but what are you telling? These are long debates. There's nowhere to run. People are going to ask you questions. What do you do if you just have a candidate who talks in Fox News chyron?
Well, keep in mind the next debate is a town hall forum, and I think that's going to strongly favor Trump. First of all, personality is going to matter a lot more. Hillary's teleprompter responses, she sounds like she's reading a teleprompter even when she's not. It's very scary. You talk about superpowers. So her teleprompter responses are going to seem cold and wooden and false. Trump can engage with people, and he's going to have people to engage with. That's important to him. It's part of his thing. Also, in the town hall format, the people usually ask very softball questions, very open-ended questions, which Trump can handle well, or they ask these kind of ridiculously pointless personal questions. My father can't find a job. And Trump can be all over.
How important is faith in how you do your job?
Exactly. Exactly. And so those play to Trump's strengths, and they make Hillary look fake. And every time she starts off going to her answers with the goddamn phrase, "That's an excellent question," and then thank
you for asking it.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I'm a janitor at McDonald's. Thank you for your service. It just doesn't work for her. She will not do well in the town hall format. The crowd will eventually be screaming for blood. Finish her, Donald. And who's moderating? Yeah, who's moderating the next one? I don't even know.
But the Martha Raddatz Anderson Cooper debate.
Yeah. So what are they going to do? Anderson Cooper is so deep into the pot for Hillary that he better not even say anything, or the mob will descend on him and break his glasses.
I have a slightly different take on the second debate than Peter, but Not that different, though. I absolutely think it will end with like an orgy of violence. That's a given. No, but I do think that Trump does kind of have the slight advantage, because when he does the town halls, that's when you get quiet, soft-spoken, not super dickish Trump. You know, when he's like talking to the hated media, he's more aggressive. But when it's some lady from Poughkeepsie who wants to know, how much he loves America, he'll nail that. But the one thing he doesn't do during town halls is he doesn't get up. He doesn't like walk towards the the person speaking. He doesn't really use the space. He just sits there in his chair like a lump and turns and says things. Yeah. If Hillary's able to go to the Bill Clinton school of town hall debate execution, she might have the advantage because she does get up. She does walk over to them. And if Peter's right, if she can get past that, this is my well-practiced and rehearsed answer to the I feel your pain territory, she might be able to pull off the town hall or surprise us at least. But I definitely think that in the town hall, the advantage is Trump.
It's worth noting that the town hall in 2008 and 2012 is where McCain and Romney really struggled against Obama, but Hillary's no Obama. One of the things that was interesting was Trump said after the debate that he was proud that he didn't go after Bill Clinton's affairs, but also seemed to suggest that he might bring it up next time. Peter, do you think that Trump might pull the Monica Lewinsky card in the next debate? And if he does, how would that play?
No, I mean, he tried to have it both ways. I didn't say anything about this thing that I just sort of said something about. And
I'm not saying, I'm just saying.
Yeah. Just the fact that Hillary knows it's out there and she has to prepare answers for it and she has to kind of steel herself that it can come at any time is an interesting little bit of debate strategy on his part. But somebody got to him, one of his advisors, finally pounded through his skull that just doesn't resonate anymore. Let his evil surrogates mention that if it feels necessary to mention it. But he's just not going to get anywhere with that. And hopefully Chelsea Clinton will be in the audience next time because Trump credited her with, him pulling back and not talking about her dad as a philandering whoremonger. Because it would have embarrassed her. Like she doesn't know.
Josh, I mean, obviously Trump is going to have to make some adjustments to not look like an ass the next debate, but do you think that desperate Trump might pull out the Lewinsky card?
I think that one might be a third debate. Like he might be saving that one for the big finish. Because he is a showman. He knows how to deploy that stuff. And Peter's absolutely right that he's totally trying to have it both ways. And the sort of, Trump supporters that I know and the, Trump supporter forums that I look at just to see what they're talking about, that moment played exactly the way he wants. They are in awe at the restraint and dignity Trump showed because the thing that really sold it was when he, said on Fox and Friends that, I saw Chelsea there and thought it would be, and people were like, oh, he's so magnanimous. So again, I don't know if that plays with middle of the road people, but for Trumpkins, he could have ascended into heaven at the end, like right after doing that, and they would have been like, well, that's totally expected.
And think about the Trump women. Such as they are. Trump has a group of women. I mean, they tend to be very conservative and right-leaning on a lot of issues. But he's got to keep them in the fold, and they don't want to hear that either. They're conservatives, but they also are cheated on regularly by their own husbands, and they just don't want to have that. They may be having sex with Bill Clinton for all I know. I mean, but he's got to keep his limited but important group of women supporters in the fold, and he can't come off as saying those terrible things about Bill Clinton because we all know how Hillary plays this. She's been practicing these lines literally for 30 years. Victim. You all know, it's typical of men to do this. It's my marriage. I held it together. It's a private matter. She's got those lines down. And Trump just doesn't want to trigger that. He wants to look magnanimous. He wants to look like a good enough guy in Trumpian terms. And I think that was also part of what he was doing, is talking to his female base.
Well, let's talk about the moderator for a bit, because Trump said after the debate that he thought Lester Holt did a great job, but Rudy Giuliani and some of his surrogates immediately attacked Lester Holt for being unfair and hostile and, God forbid, having the gall to fact-check the birth certificate crap, the Iraq war crap. I mean, this is just like, man, and they said, oh, well, he only followed up with Trump and not Clinton. Well, maybe it was because Hillary wasn't spewing complete garbage that was debunked 10 years ago while she was up there. But so this morning, Trump has already changed his tune to, well, the questions were hostile and he was unfair. And how do you guys, I don't even know how, like, just, he doesn't stick
Your
to
disgust was palpable.
He just doesn't stick to any one opinion that he has. Josh, how do you think Lester did, and what do you think that the moderators for the next two debates can take away from that? Because they're going to get criticized either way.
I think Lester Holt did way better than people expected, because it sounded like from the beginning that he was going to ask one question and then just sort of let him talk and not really do much. But he asked pointed questions, did some follow-ups. I do think that it might be, since there could have been some talk about both candidates' foundations. I feel like those are two areas where neither of them have ever been successfully sort of like pinned down. You have to talk about this. And there's no better way to really discuss it without not having both of them on stage. So I think that was maybe a thing that he should have done, because it's not like they're gonna fucking mention the wars or anything. So we might as well have some fun. But other than that, I do think that he tried to be as respectful as possible. And he ended up having, a couple exchanges with Trump, because the things that I can't remember specifically, but there were a couple times he sort of went to Clinton. I don't necessarily know if he followed up, but she didn't try to discount the premise of the question.
Yeah, exactly.
She wasn't like, no, Lester, actually,
he asked
you're
her about the email, and she said what she said, and he was like, okay, well, let's move on then.
Yeah.
Trump just can't accept any responsibility for anything he's ever said or done.
Right. He wouldn't allow Lester Holt to. Oh, go ahead, Peter.
No, I mean, even that term fact-checking. I mean, if I say that 73% of Americans believe in the future of NASA, that's a fact that you can look up, and it's not 73%, it's 64%. Oh, I was wrong. I mean, with Trump, it was not just facts, it was actual literal bullshit that he appeared to be making up standing there. So I wouldn't even go as far as calling it fact-checking. I know a lot of people have been criticizing Lester Holt for being too passive overall through the evening, but I disagree. The point of the debate is to let us see and hear the candidates. And Holt did a good job with that. He stood back and let them go. I don't think anybody we didn't see Trump as Trump wanted to present himself, or Hillary as she wanted to present herself. And he gave them plenty of room to interact. And Trump chose to interact by interrupting Hillary constantly. But that was what he wanted to do. I'm glad Lester let him do that. And we can all, as voters, judge what we think of that action. I have less faith in Anderson Cooper. Martha Radich, I'm sorry, haven't folled her work very closely. But, Anderson Cooper. Yeah, I mean, Anderson is going to try. Yeah, I mean, Anderson is all about Anderson at the end of the day. And I watch him even when they do the CNN commentary, and he's trying to insert himself into the argument at all points in time. I think he will be seen as meddling, if you will. We'll use that as close to neutral. But Lester Holt gets the points he deserves, and I'm glad he shut up and let us listen to the candidates.
Chris Wallace, I believe, is moderating the last debate. That'll be interesting.
That'll be fun.
One of the things I want to talk about as far as like fact checking, like Trump was sniffling a lot yesterday. Everybody noticed. Howard Dean accused him of doing
my favorite.
coke. But I've seen Trump rallies, and this is how he's always sniffing. You just can't hear it because the audience is drowning out. This is how it was at the Republican convention. He constantly kept sniffing, and it was on the closed captioning on the bottom. You can't avoid it. But even then, just this morning, he goes on TV and completely denies that there was any sniffling, that he just had a defective microphone, and he can't even own that, even though all of us have ears. How do you, this is like a perfect microcosm of everything, of how he treats every fact. He could just have admitted it, moved on, and he just denies it, just like he denies the Iraq War, which he supported in 2002. It exists. We all have eyes. We can all find it. He supported the invasion of Libya that he pins on Hillary, rightfully, but he also supported it. And then completely denies it ever happened. How do you, as a fact checker, even handle this just giant heap of bullshit from a guy who just seems to live like George Costanza? It's not a lie if you believe it.
Well, that's what I mean by fact checking. These are not facts. I mean, we all saw and listened to him sniffle his way through that. Nobody watched that and saw that he was having microphone problems. It's almost Orwellian.
There's this weird
thing. He kept fucking with it.
It's Orwellian.
Like an angsty fifth grader.
Yeah, 1984. I mean, they would just say things, and everyone would sort of change their, mind. They would say that 2 and 2 equals 5, and everyone would come around to believe that 2 and 2 equals 5. And that's kind of how Trump does this. And it remains inexplicable that he can do it, but it is what is happening. There's so many better answers to all these things. I mean, the Iraq War thing, for example, he could say, sure, as a private American citizen, I had opinions about the war, but Hillary Clinton voted for it. She enabled the war. My opinion was no more valid than the guy in the 10th row back there, and did no more good or no more harm than that. I mean, that's just a sentence answer that is kind of standard stuff, and Trump won't even do that. That said, I got to keep coming back to the same point. He's now he managed to become the Republican candidate. He's running statistically tied with Hillary Clinton. Something's got to be working for the guy, and he hasn't changed shit.
Josh, do you think that Hillary kind of used up all her good attacks on him yesterday? And he doesn't back down. He never admits guilt or responsibility. How do you handle that in the future debates when you've already hammered him on those points and he keeps going back to it?
Well, see, here's the thing, and I think she may have used all of the arrows in her quiver last night. But here's the thing: she's able to go yank them out and use them again, because I think what the sniffling answer shows, like, here, that's a thing that you could just make a joke about. Like, he could joke about it, but instead, because this isn't my phrase, I'm stealing it, I don't remember who, but he's temperamentally incapable of letting this, like, a single insult slide. Like, oh, you think I'm sniffing? You think
Trump
that's funny?
Has the best temperament. It's possibly his greatest asset.
That's true. It's true. He definitely has a better temperament than Hillary Clinton.
One of my favorite moments was
the
audience was told to be silent and they couldn't contain themselves when he said that.
Yeah, that was a legit, like, that was a completely honest laugh line. Like, it wasn't like the stamina thing. They gave her the applause for that one. They were like, all right, you earned it for that. We're going to break the rules. But that one, that was just, I think, a genuine, like, reaction to that nonsense. But I think that's what it is. I think that she'll be able to use these sort of same attacks, and he'll continue to respond to them. If she says something about that and he either lets it slide or just goes, maybe I could do that better, Secretary Clinton, I don't know what the fuck she's going to do, because that'll probably be, that'll be the emptying of the arsenal at that point.
Peter, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, the other thing that speaking of arrows, I mean, Hillary is so vulnerable on so many issues in so many ways, that the fact that Trump didn't do any of that, I mean, he got off to a very aggressive start talking about NAFTA and TPP, and she was back on her heels. She really couldn't defend herself there. She has 30 years of record that can be picked at and plucked, never mind, the big ticket issues like the Clinton Foundation and the emails. I'm not so sure about Benghazi anymore. But he didn't do any of that. And he just let her bait him, and he took the line every single time. She'll go at it again because each debate sort of restarts the thing. I mean, Americans forget stuff, by tomorrow morning. They're going, oh, was there a debate? What was going on? So she'll go at it again and again. If her people are any good, they'll have put together some quick commercials with Trump saying, some of the highlights of his stupidity. But it's all the wrong question. It's not how dumb Donald Trump was, what an asshole he was, how devoid from reality and the facts he was. It's, Hillary, ask yourself, how is it that you guys are tied right now? And what are you going to do about that other than just reinforcing every single thing we've known about Trump for 18 months?
Okay. One of the things I like, we were talking earlier about when Trump looked strong, and he was talking about the TPP and all the financial issues, and these are good. Like, his solutions are bullshit, but he is talking about real problems that exist. U.S. government waste, the TPP, the money we spent on Saudi Arabia and get nothing back from it. Are we maybe making a mistake dismissing some of these issues and not putting them to Hillary, for example, even though, she's already reversed on the TPP, which I think Bernie deserves a lot of credit on that. Are we making a mistake, Josh, dismissing some of the important issues that he's talking about that other people aren't just because they're coming out of a stupid person's mouth?
Absolutely. I think not only was the trade business sort of Trump's strongest performance, because again, along with the 30 years line, I think one of the other good lines he had was when he asked her if President Obama is wrong, trying to get her to say that her greatest champion in the party is wrong about this issue. That was politically savvy, like almost to the point where I was like, oh shit, Trump, uh-oh. I didn't know how the rest of the debate was going to go. Thankfully, Trump didn't disappoint. But I do think that because not only was Trump right, Clinton was wrong. She didn't want to run away from her from her husband's presidency, including NAFTA. She kind of middled on that one. She was like, yeah, it's not great, but it still did good things. And then she falsely blamed trickle-down economics for the 2008 financial crash, which was absolutely caused by the era of deregulation, partly under President Clinton. So that was, I think, where... Yeah, well, I mean, yes. In that respect, yes. But my point is that that was, I think, what made it weak. Because when Trump is good and Hillary's good and she's not lying, or obfuscating or trying to spin, he really can't hold up to her because she has just a command of the issue and he is a rambling nincompoop. But when he's talking about some stuff that she can't, where she doesn't have the truth to sort of use as her armor, that's when you get to see sort of, you create at least the opportunity for a discussion like this where you're saying, yeah, Trump lied, but so did she. I think that going forward, Clinton has to be way more cognizant of what's correct and the right sort of reading and make better arguments on trade, because trade's the main issue. And if Rust Belt voters, checking up that fact check, see, actually, Donald Trump is correct. Hillary Clinton lied about the cause of it. And that's the election for those people.
And the majority of Americans who got their finances wiped out in 2008, they know it's called the Lehman shock. They've seen the movies, The Big Short, and then there was the other one, 29 Houses. I can't remember, with Michael Shannon. They know what happened. The banks screwed them. And Hillary trying to soft pedal that, no one is sitting there saying, well, I guess she's right. What you need, though, is Trump to have, for example, that was the moment where Trump should have hit her for the speeches to Goldman Sachs and the amount of donations she's pulled in from Goldman Sachs and the way Goldman Sachs twisted the New Jersey and New York campaign funding rules to say that none of their people could officially donate to Trump. There's all sorts of things he could have done to reinforce the fact that she was bald-faced making that up standing there. But he's just not that clever. He's not that sharp. He's hoping that people at home – I don't think he's hoping. I mean, people at home may have put that together and said, oh, bullshit, when she talked. But Trump, the candidate, needs to really get a little sharper. I mean, he doesn't need numbers. He just needs to put that pin in her, because as Josh was saying, she doesn't have the truth to fall back on, and she will deflate in front of us.
One thing I want to talk
about. And I think it's also worth noting, too. Well, I think it's also worth noting, too, that whether you want to ascribe it to sexism or you want to ascribe it to just Hillary Clinton being a public political figure for as long as she had and Trump being an entertainer, but for whatever reason, Trump has to not completely fall apart on stage. Hillary has to be perfect for there to be Hillary did everything, almost everything right, and Trump did almost everything wrong. And people are like, yeah, Hillary kind of won. So, I mean, she definitely has sort of an uphill battle in this. And if Trump gets his act together, that could change the dynamic in a way. And who knows? He might have even purposely fucked this one up so he can get the most improved boy award at the next debate.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, that might be describing too much strategic thinking.
Yeah.
Or thinking alone.
This I want to discuss for a minute is what could have been. It could have and probably should have been Ted Cruz or John Kasich up there on that stage last night, not Rubio. No matter what Josh says, it was never going to be Rubio. Peter, how do you think the debate would have gone different if it was one of them? Because I think, for example, I don't know about Cruz, but Kasich, I think, would have walloped her, and I think he would be winning right now by a Reagan-esque margin.
I think if in the campaign itself, I think Kasich would have been winning or will be winning or whatever. Verbs are tricky for me. No, definitely. I mean, Hillary is so weak as a candidate. If the Republicans had
GOP's race to win.
Yeah, and so Kasich would have been ahead. Now on the debate stage, I'm not so sure because it would have been sort of a fair fight. And Hillary is just good at this. How many debates has she been in? I mean, she's been running for shit for 30 some years. She's good at all this. And Kasich would have been too much of a politician and perhaps even too much of a gentleman, to do what Trump does to his opponents. So I think she would have eaten him alive. But again, just like last night, winning the debate is not the question. I think that Hillary would still be losing. In fact, she'd be losing even worse to Kasich. Cruz, I'm less hardcore on, but I suspect she'd still be losing.
I don't know how well Cruz. I mean, he's just such a snivelly politician. You showed it again by endorsing Trump. He's the most everything about him is that caricaturish politician. But Josh, don't you think? I mean, Kasich, I feel like he would have just stolen the middle from Hillary. Hillary right now would look so far left compared to Kasich because he's he's a conservative, make no doubt about it, but he's a nice guy. Yep. He means well, and he's just trying to help. Whereas Hillary, if she did as well as she did last night, do you think that she could have stood up against Kasich?
Oh, imagine if Kasich had done that thing where he went to the White House to support the TPP as the candidate. Holy shit. You would have the candidate from the president's party publicly opposing this legislation, the nominee of the opposing party coming to the White House to work with the president. John Kasich, I think, would have won the election there because they'd be like, holy shit, bipartisanship, and that's what we pretend we want. So I think Peter's right. Kasich would definitely be running away with the election. Cruz on the debate stage. That one's tough because, again, he's as you said, Igor, he's such a snake, but he's kind of good rhetorically.
About him.
Yeah. Now, Clinton's no slouch in the lawyer department either, but I think that would have been a really fun one for us to watch. But I also think that maybe if the candidates were Clinton and generic Republican, I think it would be more like 2012 level interest, where it's like, oh, you got your Republican, you got your generic Democrat, who gives a fuck? Maybe we'll vote. So I feel like the dynamic of the race would be completely different if Trump weren't in it. Like, Trump is such a figure that affects everything around him to like a strange degree. He's like that whatever like strange alien energy they have on Star Trek to make the time travel possible, or whatever they need to do in an episode. He just creates this unknown thing where literally anything can happen and it's believable. So I definitely think that the debate would have been more of what we're used to, but I don't know if the voters would care as much if Trump wasn't the nominee.
Good point.
Speaking of voters not caring, even though this election's been crazy, next week is the the vice presidential debate, and no one cares. But, just for shits and giggles, Peter, how do you think, what do you anticipate in a matchup between Mike Pence and Tim Kaine next Tuesday?
The best we could.
Josh is already falling asleep. That's about right.
Yeah, no, I mean, it will be. It'll be absolutely, it's going to be horrible. But the best we could hope for would really go at it as surrogates for their candidates. And that they really got into a thing where they were defending each other's, defending their own candidate. I think that what we will get is two really boring guys talking policy wonk stuff inarticulately, where the moderator's job is going to be basically to kind of keep everybody awake. I think you're going to see a lot more active moderation simply to keep the discussion going. Tim Kaine is not that liberal. He's got a lot of conservative stuff. He's got a lot of statements in his background against abortion and stuff like that. I mean, Mike Pence has all sorts of crazy things that Cain can pull up, but he just seems kind of like a nice guy, and I don't think he's going to sacrifice the nice guy image, to try to beat the crap out of Mike Pence. Cain will be strongest if he goes after Donald Trump, and just happens to be saying it to Mike Pence, but I really don't give him that much credit.
Well, Mike Pence is a nice guy, too. I mean, he's just as crazy as Ted Cruz. But, Josh, what do you anticipate in the matchup between two nice guys in a debate?
See, here's where I think I'm going to disagree with Peter just a little bit, in that I think Cain would be perfectly willing to sacrifice his nice guy image to, do his duty and go after Pence, because Peter's exactly right. If, the issue comes up about abortion, Cain's like, I'm against it. I don't agree with my candidate on everything. So that sort of takes away all of Mike Pence's.
I don't think that Cain would just alienate Hillary like that on the stage.
I mean, no. But I mean, he'll do that.
His abortion position. I think he's moved to the left.
Well, what I'm saying is it's not the red meat kind of thing that Mike Pence, the evangelical conservative that he is, can really capitalize on. However, because Mike Pence is basically serving as like the anti-vice presidential candidate, like he's normally the vice president's out there kicking up dirt and saying fucked up things. He's the cleaner. He comes in and is like, no, what Trump meant was we will follow the Constitution. So I feel like if he has to answer for Trump's stuff, he won't be able to maintain that as well as, Cain, who could probably, I think he'd be capable in sort of, if not directly answering, deflecting enough of Hillary criticism for it to work. But someone, I don't remember, I should remember these things better, but someone described that debate as vanilla pudding versus vanilla ice cream. So I feel like that basically sums up how exciting it'll be.
Yeah, they'll cut it back to 30 minutes with commercials if we're lucky.
All right, well, let's leave it there, and we'll check back next Wednesday and see if the country's still awake. Thanks for tuning in. Keep reading Latest.com.